The difference between people who succeed and those who almost do. Why some people turn potential into reality while others stay stuck in possibility. The world is full of people with potential. People with talent. People with intelligence. People with ambition. People with dreams. Yet only a small percentage transform that potential into reality. The surprising truth is that the gap between those who succeed and those who almost do is often much smaller than people imagine. It is rarely IQ. Rarely talent. Rarely luck alone. More often, it is a collection of small decisions repeated consistently over time. This book explores the hidden habits, mindsets, and behaviors that separate action takers from dreamers, finishers from starters, and achievers from almost achievers. Over 10 chapters, you will discover why success is less about extraordinary ability and more about ordinary disciplines practiced relentlessly. Chapter 1. The Tragedy of Almost. There is a word that rarely receives attention. A word that quietly describes millions of lives. That word is almost. Almost started. Almost finished. Almost committed. Almost succeeded. Almost became. Almost achieved. Almost lived up to their potential. At first glance, almost sounds harmless. In some situations, it even sounds encouraging. After all, almost means you came close. Close to the goal. Close to the dream. Close to the breakthrough. Close to the life you wanted. But there is something deeply tragic about almost. Because life does not reward proximity. It rewards completion. The world is filled with people who came close enough to see success but never close enough to experience it. And understanding why this happens may be one of the most valuable lessons you ever learn. Potential means nothing by itself. Society loves potential. Teachers praise it. Parents celebrate it. Friends admire it. People often say things like, "You have so much potential." At first, this sounds like a compliment. And it is. But potential has a hidden weakness. Potential is only possibility, not reality. Potential is what could happen, not what has happened. A person can possess enormous potential and accomplish very little. Another person can possess average talent and accomplish extraordinary things. The difference is execution. Potential opens doors. Action walks through them. The cemetery of unused talent. Imagine a place where every unwritten book exists. Every unstarted business. Every abandoned dream. Every undeveloped skill. Every unrealized possibility. That place would be enormous. Far larger than any city. Because human history is filled with unused potential. People who had ideas but never acted. People who had gifts but never developed them. People who had opportunities but never pursued them. The world rarely suffers from a shortage of talent. It suffers from a shortage of follow-through. Why almost feels comfortable? One reason people remain trapped in almost is because almost protects the ego. As long as the dream remains unfinished, failure remains hypothetical. The writer who never publishes can still imagine success. The entrepreneur who never launches can still imagine victory. The creator who never shares can still imagine praise. The dream remains perfect because reality never tests it. This feels safe, comforting, protective, but it carries a cost. The cost is a life spent imagining instead of experiencing. The difference between intention and reality. Many people judge themselves by intentions. I intended to start. I intended to improve. I intended to change. Intentions matter. But life responds to behavior, not intention. The person who intends to write a book and never writes remains unpublished. The person who intends to exercise and never trains remains unhealthy. The person who intends to act and never acts remains stuck. Reality responds to what you do, not what you plan to do. Why potential can become a trap? Ironically, potential sometimes becomes an obstacle. People who are naturally talented often rely on talent. Things come easily. Success arrives quickly. Effort seems optional. Then eventually they encounter something difficult. Something requiring persistence, discipline, consistency. And suddenly talent is no longer enough. Meanwhile, less naturally gifted individuals often develop stronger habits. They learn discipline early, persistence early, resilience early. And over time, those qualities frequently outperform talent. Potential without discipline is fragile. Discipline without extraordinary talent can be unstoppable. The pain of looking back. Imagine reaching the end of your life and seeing two versions of yourself. The person you became, and the person you could have become. The gap between those versions is where regret lies. Not in mistakes, not in failures, but in unrealized possibilities. The opportunities ignored, the risks avoided, the dreams postponed, the talents undeveloped. This is the true tragedy of almost. Not what happened. What never happened. The invisible difference. The difference between success and almost success is often invisible in the beginning. Two people start with similar abilities, similar ambitions, similar opportunities. One takes a small action, the other delays. One follows through, the other hesitates. One remains consistent, the other becomes inconsistent. The differences appear tiny, almost insignificant. But over time they compound. Years later the outcomes appear dramatically different. Yet the gap was created through small decisions repeated consistently. Why most people never realize their potential. Most people do not fail dramatically. They drift. They postpone. They hesitate. They settle. The decline is gradual, almost invisible. One missed opportunity, one delayed decision, one abandoned goal, one excuse. Then another. Then another. The person does not notice the pattern until years have passed. By then, the habit of almost has become a lifestyle. The first step away from almost, the journey away from almost, begins with honesty. Not harshness. Honesty. Asking difficult questions. Where have you been hesitating? What have you been postponing? What dream remains trapped in planning? What opportunity remains unexplored? What action keeps getting delayed? Awareness is the beginning of change. Because you cannot transform a pattern you refuse to acknowledge. The core truth. At its core, success is often less glamorous than people imagine. It is not usually a matter of brilliance. It is a matter of execution. Showing up. Following through. Continuing when excitement fades. Acting when fear appears. Finishing what you start. The gap between success and almost success is rarely dramatic. It is usually behavioral. And behavior can change. The question that matters as you begin this journey, consider one question. Are you building a life of achievement or a life of almost? The answer is not determined by your intentions. Not by your dreams. Not by your potential. It is determined by your actions. Every day. Every decision. Every step. Because success is not built through possibility. It is built through participation. And participation begins the moment you stop admiring the dream and start pursuing it. Chapter 2. Dreamers versus doers. Every great achievement begins the same way. As a thought. An idea. A vision. A dream. Before every company existed, someone imagined it. Before every book was written, someone envisioned it. Before every invention changed the world, someone believed it was possible. Dreams are powerful. They inspire, motivate, excite. They allow people to see possibilities beyond their current circumstances. Without dreams, progress would be impossible. But there is a problem. Dreams alone are worthless. That statement may sound harsh, but it is true. Because a dream without action remains imagination, potential, possibility, nothing more. The world is full of dreamers. Far fewer people become doers. And that difference changes everything. The comfort of dreaming feels good. It costs nothing. You can imagine success, recognition, achievement, freedom, impact. The mind enjoys these visions. In fact, dreaming can be so enjoyable that some people become addicted to it. They spend years imagining a better future, talking about goals, planning ambitions, visualizing outcomes, yet never taking meaningful action. The dream becomes entertainment rather than a mission, a source of emotional satisfaction without the discomfort of execution. This is one reason so many people remain stuck. They mistake imagining for progressing. Why action feels different? Dreaming is safe. Action is risky. Dreaming happens privately. Action happens publicly. Dreaming protects the ego. Action exposes it. When you act, reality enters the picture. People may judge. Mistakes may happen. Failure becomes possible. The gap between dreaming and doing is where fear appears. Many people cross that gap occasionally. Few cross it consistently. And consistency is where results are created. The difference is not intelligence. People often assume successful individuals possess extraordinary intelligence. Sometimes they do. Often they don't. History is filled with examples of highly intelligent people who accomplished very little. It is also filled with ordinary individuals who achieved extraordinary things. The difference was rarely intellect alone. The difference was execution. The willingness to translate ideas into behavior. To move from concept to action. From vision to reality. From dreamer to doer. The dreamer's trap. One of the biggest dangers dreamers face is the illusion of progress. Imagine two people who want to start a business. The first spends 6 months researching, watching videos, reading articles, planning strategies, discussing possibilities. The second spends 6 months building, making mistakes, learning, selling, adjusting, improving. At the end of 6 months, both feel busy. But only one has momentum. Only one has experience. Only one has evidence. The dreamer accumulated information. The doer accumulated progress. Why action creates clarity? Many people delay action because they want certainty. They want a perfect plan. A complete roadmap. Absolute confidence. The problem is that clarity rarely arrives before action. Clarity usually comes from action. The entrepreneur learns by building. The writer learns by writing. The speaker learns by speaking. The leader learns by leading. Action reveals information that thinking alone cannot. The doer understands this. The dreamer keeps waiting. The myth of readiness. Dreamers often tell themselves, "I'm not ready yet." The statement sounds reasonable, but readiness is often a moving target. There is always more to learn. More preparation to complete, more confidence to build, more information to gather. If readiness becomes the requirement, action may never occur. Doers understand something important. Nobody feels fully ready. They begin anyway. And readiness develops through the process. The power of imperfect starts. Most successful journeys begin badly. The first video is awkward. The first speech is nervous. The first product is flawed. The first attempt is imperfect. Dreamers see imperfection as a reason to wait. Doers see imperfection as part of growth. This distinction creates enormous differences over time. The dreamer keeps preparing. The doer keeps improving. Months later, the doer possesses experience while the dreamer still possesses plans. Action creates identity. Every action sends a message to the brain. The person who acts consistently begins seeing themselves differently. Not as someone who wants success. As someone who pursues success. This shift is powerful. Identity influences behavior. The dreamer says, "I want to write a book." The doer says, "I write every day." The dreamer focuses on outcomes. The doer focuses on process. And process eventually creates outcomes. Why most people stay dreamers? The answer is surprisingly simple. Action is uncomfortable. Dreaming is comfortable. Action requires effort. Dreaming requires imagination. Action risks failure. Dreaming protects possibility. The human brain naturally prefers comfort. This means remaining a dreamer is often easier. At least in the short term. But the long-term consequences are significant. Because dreams never become reality through observation, only through participation. The momentum advantage: one action creates momentum. Momentum creates more action. More action creates more momentum. This cycle becomes incredibly powerful. The person who starts gains information, confidence, experience, relationships, opportunities. Each benefit makes future action easier. Meanwhile, the dreamer remains stuck at the starting line, waiting for certainty, waiting for confidence, waiting for the perfect moment, watching others advance. The cost of observation: many people spend years observing, watching others succeed, studying others, analyzing others, admiring others. Observation has value, but it cannot replace participation. You cannot learn swimming by watching swimmers forever. Eventually you must enter the water. Life works the same way. Knowledge matters. Action matters more. Because action transforms theory into reality. Dreams need discipline. A dream without discipline remains a fantasy. Discipline gives dreams structure, consistency, momentum, execution. The dreamer relies on inspiration. The doer relies on commitment. Inspiration comes and goes. Commitment remains. This is why disciplined people often outperform more talented people. They continue when enthusiasm disappears. And success frequently belongs to those who continue. The real difference. The difference between dreamers and doers is not motivation, not intelligence, not talent, not luck. The difference is behavior. One group repeatedly asks, "What if?" The other repeatedly asks, "Why not?" One group waits, the other moves. One group plans forever, the other starts imperfectly. One group protects potential, the other develops it. And over time, that difference becomes enormous. The choice. Every person faces a choice. Not once. Repeatedly. Daily. Will you remain in the world of possibility? Or enter the world of action? Will you continue imagining? Or begin creating? Will you stay a dreamer? Or become a doer? The answer is never determined by your intentions. Only by your behavior. Because dreams are the beginning. Action is the bridge. And success lives on the other side of that bridge. The next discovery. Now that we understand the difference between dreamers and doers, another question emerges. Why do some people continue making progress while others repeatedly stop and start? Why do some individuals maintain momentum for years while others struggle with inconsistency? The answer lies in one of the most underrated forces in human achievement. Not talent. Not intelligence. Not motivation. Consistency. And consistency is what separates temporary effort from extraordinary results. Chapter 3. The power of consistency. If success had a secret ingredient, it would not be talent. It would not be intelligence. It would not be luck. It would not even be motivation. It would be consistency. The ability to continue, to show up repeatedly, to take action long after excitement fades, to keep moving when progress feels slow, to remain committed when results are invisible. This is one of the biggest differences between people who succeed and those who almost do. Almost successful people often work hard. But they work hard inconsistently. Successful people may not always work harder. But they work consistently. And consistency is where transformation lies. The myth of intensity. Most people are fascinated by intensity. They admire dramatic effort. The entrepreneur working 18 hours a day. The athlete training until exhaustion. The creator producing enormous amounts of work. Intensity is impressive. But intensity is not the primary driver of long-term success. Consistency is. A person who exercises for 30 minutes every day often achieves more than someone who trains intensely once every 2 weeks. A writer who produces 500 words daily often finishes more books than someone who waits for inspiration. Small actions repeated consistently create extraordinary outcomes. Because consistency compounds. Why motivation fails? Motivation feels powerful. When motivation is present, action feels easy. Energy is high. Focus is strong. Optimism is abundant. The problem is that motivation is temporary. It fluctuates. Some days you feel motivated. Other days you don't. If action depends on motivation, progress becomes unpredictable. Successful people understand this. They appreciate motivation, but they do not rely on it. They build systems, habits, schedules, routines, structures that continue working even when motivation disappears. The magic of showing up. There is a simple phrase that appears repeatedly in successful lives: show up. Show up when you feel inspired. Show up when you don't. Show up when progress is obvious. Show up when progress is invisible. Show up when conditions are ideal. Show up when conditions are imperfect. Showing up sounds simple, almost boring. But it is incredibly powerful. Because every time you show up, you strengthen momentum. And momentum is one of the most valuable forces in achievement. Small wins create big results. Many people underestimate small actions because they focus on immediate outcomes. One workout does not transform a body. One page does not create a book. One video does not build an audience. One conversation does not build a relationship. The results seem insignificant. So people quit. What they fail to understand is that success rarely comes from a single action. It comes from accumulated actions. Hundreds of workouts. Hundreds of pages. Hundreds of videos. Hundreds of conversations. The extraordinary is often built from the ordinary repeated long enough. Why people break consistency? Most people do not quit permanently. They quit temporarily. Then start again. Then stop again. Then restart again. The cycle continues. This pattern creates frustration because progress constantly resets. Why does it happen? Because people often pursue perfection instead of consistency. They miss one day and assume failure. They make one mistake and lose momentum. They encounter one setback and stop. Successful people think differently. They focus on returning quickly, not being perfect. The never miss twice rule. One powerful principle is simple: never miss twice. Everyone makes mistakes. Everyone has bad days. Everyone loses momentum occasionally. The problem is not missing once. The problem is allowing one miss to become a habit. One skipped workout becomes a month. One missed writing session becomes a year. One delayed project becomes a forgotten dream. The key is recovery. Return quickly. Protect consistency. Maintain momentum. The compound effect. Imagine improving by only 1% each day. The improvement seems insignificant, almost invisible. Yet over time, the effect becomes extraordinary. Consistency works through compounding. Just as money compounds financially, effort compounds personally. Skills improve. Knowledge expands. Relationships deepen. Confidence grows. The progress may appear slow initially, but eventually it accelerates. This is why consistency often feels unrewarding at first. The biggest benefits arrive later. Why consistency beats talent? Talent creates potential. Consistency creates results. A talented person who works occasionally often loses to an average person who works consistently. This principle appears everywhere. Sports, business, writing, leadership, learning, creative work. The consistent individual accumulates experience, practice, feedback, improvement. Eventually, the gap becomes difficult to overcome. Talent matters. Consistency often matters more. The identity of consistency. People who remain consistent do not merely perform consistent actions. They develop a consistent identity. They see themselves as someone who follows through, someone reliable, someone disciplined, someone committed. This identity changes behavior. Because actions naturally align with self-perception. The person stops asking, "Do I feel like it?" and starts asking, What does someone like me do? The answer creates consistency. The danger of all or nothing thinking. One of the greatest enemies of consistency is all or nothing thinking. People believe, if I can't do everything, I might as well do nothing. This mindset destroys progress. Because life is rarely perfect, schedules become complicated, energy fluctuates, unexpected challenges appear. Consistency requires flexibility. Sometimes progress is fast, sometimes progress is slow. Both are acceptable. What matters is continuing, not perfection. Success is usually boring. Many people expect success to feel exciting every day. It doesn't. In fact, success is often repetitive, routine, predictable. The same habits, the same actions, the same commitments, repeated again and again. This reality disappoints some people, but it empowers others. Because they realize achievement is not reserved for extraordinary individuals. It is available to anyone willing to remain consistent. The confidence created by consistency. Consistency creates more than results. It creates trust. Self-trust. Every time you keep a promise to yourself, confidence grows. Every time you follow through, belief strengthens. The brain begins viewing you as reliable, capable, dependable. This form of confidence is powerful because it is earned, not imagined, not wished for, built through evidence. What most people miss. When people observe successful individuals, they often focus on major achievements. The promotion, the business, the book, the accomplishment. They rarely focus on the thousands of ordinary actions that created those achievements. The early mornings, the practice sessions, the repeated efforts, the boring days, the disciplined choices. Success is often invisible while it is being built. Only the outcome becomes visible. The long-term advantage. Imagine two people starting at the same point. One works intensely for short periods. The other works consistently for years. Who wins? In most cases, the consistent individual. Not immediately, but eventually. Because consistency accumulates, momentum accumulates, experience accumulates. The gap grows slowly, then dramatically. This is why consistency is so powerful. Its effects multiply over time. The real difference. People who almost succeed often rely on emotion. People who succeed rely on commitment. Emotion changes. Commitment remains. Emotion creates bursts. Commitment creates consistency. Emotion starts projects. Commitment finishes them. This distinction appears small, but over years, it creates entirely different lives. The question that matters. The question is not, can you work hard today? Most people can. The real question is, can you continue tomorrow? And the next day? And the next week? And the next month? And the next year? Because success rarely belongs to the person who works hardest once. It belongs to the person who keeps showing up. The next discovery. Consistency creates progress, but progress alone is not enough. Many people begin things consistently, yet still fail to achieve extraordinary results. Why? Because there is another skill that separates achievers from almost achievers. A skill most people underestimate. The ability to finish. Starting is common, continuing is uncommon, but finishing is rare. And rare behaviors create rare outcomes. Chapter 4. Finishers win. Starting is exciting. Finishing is powerful. Most people love beginnings. A new goal. A new habit. A new project. A new business. A new relationship. A new opportunity. Beginnings are filled with possibility, hope, energy, optimism. Everything feels fresh. The future looks bright. The imagination creates endless positive outcomes. But eventually something changes. The excitement fades. The work becomes repetitive. Obstacles appear. Progress slows. Reality replaces fantasy. This is the moment where most people separate into two groups. Those who continue. And those who stop. The first group becomes finishers. The second group becomes almost successful. And that difference changes everything. The addiction to starting. Many people are addicted to beginnings. They love the emotional rush of a fresh start. The excitement of possibility. The feeling of ambition. The sense that everything is about to change. So they start. Again. And again. And again. New business ideas. New fitness plans. New books. New projects. New goals. The problem is not starting. The problem is constantly restarting. A person who begins 10 projects and finishes none creates frustration, not progress. Because results come from completion, not initiation. Why finishing is rare? Finishing is difficult because it requires qualities that starting does not. Patience, discipline, persistence, resilience, commitment. Anyone can begin when motivation is high. Finishing requires continuing when motivation disappears. And motivation always disappears eventually. This is where most dreams die. Not at the beginning. In the middle. The place where excitement fades and commitment becomes necessary. The valley of disappointment. Every meaningful goal contains a period I call the valley of disappointment. This is the stage where effort feels greater than reward. You work hard. But results seem small. You invest energy. But progress feels slow. You continue showing up. But the outcome remains invisible. Most people quit here. Not because the goal is impossible. Because the rewards have not appeared yet. The finisher understands something important. Results often lag behind effort. Success is delayed. Growth is delayed. Improvement is delayed. The reward comes later. The effort comes first. The middle is where winners are made. Everyone talks about the beginning. Everyone celebrates the ending. Very few people appreciate the middle. The middle is messy, boring, frustrating, uncertain. It lacks the excitement of starting and the satisfaction of finishing. Yet the middle is where winners are created. Because the middle tests commitment. The middle reveals character. The middle exposes whether someone is serious or merely interested. Interested people start. Committed people finish. The cost of incomplete projects. Every unfinished project carries a hidden cost. Not just lost time. Lost confidence. Each abandoned goal sends a message to the brain. I don't follow through. I quit when things become difficult. I can't be trusted to finish. These messages accumulate. Eventually they become identity. The person starts believing they are inconsistent, undisciplined, unreliable. The tragedy is that the problem was never ability. The problem was completion. Completion creates confidence. Most people think confidence comes before action. In reality, confidence often comes after completion. Every finished project becomes evidence, proof, a reminder that you can follow through, that you can persist, that you can overcome obstacles. The brain notices this evidence. Self-trust grows. Confidence expands. Finishing strengthens identity. Because every completed commitment says, I am someone who finishes what I start. Why successful people finish? More successful people are not necessarily more talented, more intelligent, or more gifted. Often they simply finish more things. They complete projects, complete goals, complete commitments. This creates a compounding advantage. Finished projects create skills. Skills create opportunities. Opportunities create results. Results create momentum. The person who finishes repeatedly enters a cycle of growth. The person who quits repeatedly enters a cycle of frustration. The danger of new opportunities. Ironically, one of the biggest threats to finishing is opportunity. New ideas appear. New possibilities emerge. New projects look exciting. The current project suddenly feels boring by comparison. Many people abandon meaningful work because something newer captures their attention. This creates a pattern. Constant movement. Very little completion. Finishers understand that every project becomes boring at some point. They do not chase excitement. They honor commitment. Excellence lives beyond excitement. Most people operate well when they feel inspired. Few operate well when they don't. This is why excellence is rare. Excellence requires continuing beyond excitement, beyond motivation, beyond enthusiasm. The athlete trains on difficult days. The writer writes on uninspired days. The entrepreneur works through uncertainty. The creator creates despite resistance. This ability separates professionals from amateurs. Amateurs act when they feel like it. Professionals act because they committed. The finish line effect. Something remarkable happens when you complete a project. You gain more than the result. You gain experience, perspective, confidence, knowledge, momentum. A finished imperfect project teaches more than a perfect project that never exists. The completed book teaches more than the planned book. The launched business teaches more than the researched business. The published video teaches more than the edited draft. Completion transforms theory into reality. And reality is the greatest teacher. Why perfectionists struggle to finish. Perfectionism often disguises itself as excellence. But perfectionism frequently prevents completion. The perfectionist keeps adjusting, improving, refining, tweaking, waiting. The work is never ready, never finished, never released. The standard remains impossible. As a result, progress stops. The finisher understands an important truth. Done is often better than perfect. Because completed work can improve, unfinished work cannot. The identity of a finisher. At some point, finishing becomes more than behavior. It becomes identity. The person starts seeing themselves differently. Not as someone who occasionally follows through. As someone who always follows through. This identity influences future actions. The brain begins expecting completion. Persistence becomes normal. Consistency becomes natural. The person develops a reputation with themselves. And that reputation matters. The hidden opportunity. Most people underestimate how rare finishing is. This creates opportunity. Because simply completing things consistently places you ahead of the majority. Not because others lack ability. Because many stop before completion. The ability to finish is surprisingly uncommon. And uncommon habits create uncommon results. The difference between interest and commitment: when you're interested, you do what is convenient. When you're committed, you do what is necessary. Interest depends on circumstances. Commitment creates circumstances. Interest starts. Commitment finishes. This distinction may be one of the most important lessons in this book. Because success rarely asks whether you are interested. It asks whether you are committed. The long-term impact: imagine two people with identical talent, identical intelligence, identical opportunities. One finishes everything. The other finishes half. 10 years later, the difference becomes enormous. The finisher possesses more skills, more experience, more credibility, more opportunities, more confidence. Not because they were better. Because they completed more. Completion compounds. Just like consistency. Just like effort. Just like growth. The question that changes everything: whenever you feel tempted to quit, ask yourself, am I tired of the work, or am I simply tired? The answer matters. Many people abandon meaningful goals because they confuse temporary fatigue with permanent disinterest. The finisher learns to recognize the difference. And that awareness protects progress. The final lesson. Starting is admirable. Continuing is valuable. Finishing is transformational. Because the world responds differently to completed work. Completed work creates impact. Completed work creates results. Completed work creates opportunities. Completed work changes lives. The ability to finish may be one of the greatest advantages you can develop. Not because it is glamorous. Because it is rare. The next discovery: consistency helps you continue. Finishing helps you complete. But there is another challenge every successful person must face. A challenge that destroys countless dreams. A challenge most people spend their lives avoiding. Discomfort. Because the truth is simple. Success requires doing things that are difficult, uncertain, and uncomfortable. And the people who succeed develop a relationship with discomfort that most people never understand. Chapter 5. The ability to endure discomfort. Most people think success is about knowing more, learning more, planning more, preparing more. Sometimes it is. But there is another factor that often matters even more: the ability to endure discomfort. This is one of the least discussed and most important differences between people who succeed and people who almost do. Because success is rarely blocked by a lack of information. It is often blocked by a lack of tolerance for discomfort, the uncomfortable conversation, the uncomfortable decision, the uncomfortable risk, the uncomfortable uncertainty, the uncomfortable effort, the uncomfortable wait. Most people spend their lives trying to avoid discomfort. Successful people learn to move through it. And that difference changes everything. The human desire for comfort. The human brain is designed to seek comfort. This made sense for most of history. Comfort often meant safety. Safety increased survival. As a result, the brain naturally prefers certainty over uncertainty, familiarity over novelty, predictability over risk, ease over effort. This instinct is useful for survival. But it can become a problem when growth is the goal. Because growth and comfort rarely exist in the same place. Why growth feels uncomfortable. Every new level of life requires entering unfamiliar territory, learning a skill, building a business, starting a channel, writing a book, leading a team, changing habits. These activities create discomfort because they involve uncertainty. The brain dislikes uncertainty. It interprets uncertainty as potential danger. The result is resistance. Not because the goal is wrong. Because the goal is unfamiliar. Many people misinterpret this feeling. They assume discomfort means stop. In reality, discomfort often means grow. The comfort zone myth. People often speak about the comfort zone as if it is a safe place. And in the short term, it is. Inside the comfort zone, there is little risk, little uncertainty, little embarrassment, little failure. But there is also little growth, little progress, little transformation. The comfort zone protects you from discomfort. It also protects you from possibility. That is why comfort can become dangerous. Not because it hurts you immediately. Because it slowly limits what your life can become. Successful people feel fear too. One of the biggest misconceptions about successful people is that they are fearless. They are not. They experience fear, doubt, nervousness, anxiety, uncertainty, just like everyone else. The difference is not emotional. It is behavioral. Most people see discomfort and retreat. Successful people see discomfort and proceed carefully. They understand something important. Feeling uncomfortable does not mean you are incapable. It means you are expanding. The price of every reward in life carries a price. Fitness requires physical discomfort. Learning requires mental discomfort. Relationships require emotional discomfort. Leadership requires responsibility. Achievement requires effort. Confidence requires action. There is no reward without a corresponding cost. The problem is that many people want the reward without the discomfort. The confidence without the risk. The success without the failure. The results without the effort. The growth without the challenge. Life rarely works that way. The reward is hidden inside the discomfort. Why avoidance becomes a trap. Avoidance feels good temporarily. You avoid the conversation. Immediate relief. You avoid the challenge. Immediate comfort. You avoid the risk. Immediate safety. The brain rewards avoidance because discomfort disappears. But the relief is temporary. The underlying problem remains. In many cases, it grows. The difficult conversation becomes more difficult. The challenge becomes larger. The fear becomes stronger. Avoidance solves feelings. Action solves problems. The confidence paradox. Most people want confidence before taking action. But confidence is usually created by action. And action often requires discomfort. This creates a paradox. You must endure discomfort to gain the confidence that eventually reduces discomfort. The person who understands this progresses. The person who waits remains stuck. Because confidence is rarely given. It is earned. Through repeated exposure to difficulty. Training your discomfort muscle. Discomfort tolerance works like a muscle. The more you train it, the stronger it becomes. Start small. Speak up when you normally stay silent. Take a small risk. Try something unfamiliar. Face a minor fear. Each experience teaches the brain an important lesson. I can handle this. Over time, larger challenges become manageable. Not because they became easier. Because you became stronger. The role of uncertainty. Many people believe uncertainty is the enemy. But uncertainty is often the birthplace of opportunity. Every business starts with uncertainty. Every relationship begins with uncertainty. Every achievement involves uncertainty. If you remove uncertainty completely, you often remove opportunity as well. This is why successful people develop comfort with uncertainty. Not because they enjoy it. Because they understand it is unavoidable. Delayed gratification. One of the most powerful forms of discomfort is waiting. Waiting for results. Waiting for improvement. Waiting for success. The modern world encourages instant gratification. Immediate rewards. Immediate feedback. Immediate pleasure. Success rarely operates that way. Meaningful achievements often require sustained effort before visible results appear. The ability to tolerate this delay creates enormous advantages. Because most people quit before the reward arrives. The pain of discipline versus the pain of regret. There are two kinds of pain in life. The pain of discipline and the pain of regret. Discipline hurts now. Regret hurts later. Discipline requires effort. Regret requires reflection. Discipline is temporary. Regret can last a lifetime. Successful people choose discipline more often. Not because it feels good. Because they understand the alternative. And the alternative is usually more painful. Why rejection matters. Rejection is one of the most uncomfortable experiences humans face. It threatens belonging, approval, acceptance. As a result, many people structure their lives around avoiding rejection. They avoid asking, avoid sharing, avoid trying, avoid risking. The result is safety, but also limitation. Successful people experience rejection regularly. Not because they enjoy it. Because participation requires it. Every meaningful pursuit involves the possibility of hearing no. The competitive advantage nobody talks about. Many people search for secret strategies, special knowledge, hidden techniques. But one of the greatest advantages is surprisingly simple: being willing to endure what others avoid. Having difficult conversations, making uncomfortable decisions, working through uncertainty, persisting through boredom, remaining patient during slow progress. These behaviors are available to almost everyone. Yet surprisingly few people practice them consistently. The expansion effect. Every time you face discomfort successfully, your world expands. Your comfort zone grows. Your confidence grows. Your capabilities grow. What once felt impossible begins feeling normal. This process repeats indefinitely. Growth creates discomfort. Discomfort creates growth. The cycle becomes self-reinforcing. Eventually, challenges that once terrified you become routine. Why almost successful people stop. Many people get remarkably close to success. Close to the breakthrough. Close to the opportunity. Close to the result. Then they stop. Why? Because the final stages often require the greatest discomfort. More responsibility. More visibility. More risk. More pressure. The person retreats. Not because they lack ability. Because they lack tolerance for discomfort. This is one reason almost successful people remain almost successful. The courage hidden inside discomfort. Discomfort is not the opposite of success. It is often the pathway to it. The willingness to endure discomfort is a form of courage. A decision to prioritize growth over immediate relief. Possibility over predictability. Progress over comfort. Every meaningful achievement requires this decision. Again and again. The question that changes everything the next time you encounter discomfort, ask yourself, is this discomfort harming me, or is it growing me? The distinction matters. Because many of the experiences that transform our lives feel uncomfortable in the beginning. The discomfort is not evidence that you should stop. It may be evidence that you are finally moving in the right direction. The next discovery. Discomfort is unavoidable. Success requires learning to tolerate it. But there is another difference between achievers and almost achievers. A difference even more fundamental. One group takes ownership. The other looks for explanations. One group asks, "What can I do?" The other asks, "Whose fault is this?" And that single distinction can determine the direction of an entire life. Chapter 6. Taking responsibility for results. There is a moment that separates people who change their lives from people who spend years wishing they could. It is not a moment of inspiration. Not a moment of luck. Not a moment of opportunity. It is a moment of responsibility. A moment when a person stops asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and starts asking, "What can I do about it?" That shift may seem small, but it changes everything. Because responsibility creates power. Excuses create helplessness. Ownership creates action. Blame creates stagnation. And the people who succeed understand this better than most. The most powerful question. Every challenge in life presents a choice. You can focus on causes. Or you can focus on solutions. The first question is, who is responsible? The second question is, what is my next move? The first question often leads backward. The second moves you forward. This does not mean causes are unimportant. Understanding problems matters. But successful people refuse to remain trapped there. They quickly shift their attention toward action. Because action is where influence exists. The blame trap. Blame feels satisfying, at least temporarily. It explains failure, protects the ego, removes responsibility. If someone else is the problem, then you are free from accountability. The challenge is that blame also removes power. Because if someone else controls your outcomes, then someone else controls your future. The moment you give away responsibility, you give away influence. And without influence, change becomes impossible. Responsibility is not self-blame. Many people misunderstand responsibility. They confuse it with self-criticism. But responsibility is not saying, "Everything is my fault." Responsibility is saying, "Regardless of what happened, I am responsible for my response." There is a huge difference. You are not responsible for every circumstance. You are responsible for how you react to circumstances. That distinction is where personal power begins. Life is not always fair. One of the most difficult truths to accept is that life is not always fair. Some people begin with advantages. Others begin with obstacles. Some receive opportunities. Others receive challenges. Some encounter support. Others encounter resistance. These realities exist. Ignoring them would be dishonest. But there is another truth. Focusing exclusively on unfairness rarely improves outcomes. The people who succeed acknowledge reality. Then ask, "What can I do from here?" That question creates movement. The ownership mindset. People who take responsibility view problems differently. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening?" they ask, "What can I learn?" Instead of, "Who should fix this?" they ask, "What can I do?" Instead of, "Why don't I have better circumstances?" they ask, "How can I use the circumstances I have?" This mindset does not eliminate challenges, but it transforms how challenges are approached. And that often changes the outcome. Why excuses are dangerous. Excuses are attractive because they sound reasonable. Sometimes they are reasonable. That is what makes them dangerous. I don't have enough time. I don't have enough money. I don't have enough experience. The timing isn't right. The market is too competitive. Many excuses contain elements of truth. But successful people ask a different question. Given these limitations, what can I still do? That question turns obstacles into strategies. Excuses end the conversation. Ownership begins it. The responsibility advantage. Imagine two people facing the same problem. One focuses on blame. The other focuses on solutions. Who improves faster? Who learns faster? Who adapts faster? Who grows faster? Almost always, the person taking responsibility. Because ownership directs energy toward action. And action creates results. The advantage compounds over time. Years later, the difference becomes enormous. Why responsibility feels heavy? Responsibility can feel uncomfortable. Because it removes escape routes. Once you accept ownership, excuses become harder to use. The mirror becomes clearer. The standards become higher. The expectations become more personal. This discomfort causes many people to avoid responsibility. Yet the same responsibility that feels heavy initially often becomes liberating later. Because it reveals how much influence you actually possess. The victim mindset versus the creator mindset. There are two ways to view life. The victim mindset asks, what is happening to me? The creator mindset asks, what can I create from this? The victim mindset focuses on circumstances. The creator mindset focuses on choices. The victim mindset waits. The creator mindset acts. This distinction may be one of the most important differences between people who succeed and people who almost do. Because life rarely changes for those who wait. It often changes for those who create. Personal responsibility creates confidence. Confidence is not created by positive thinking alone. It is created by evidence. And responsibility creates evidence. Every time you solve a problem, confidence grows. Every time you adapt to difficulty, confidence grows. Every time you overcome a challenge, confidence grows. The person begins trusting themselves. Not because life became easier. Because they became more capable. That trust becomes a powerful asset. The mirror principle. One of the fastest ways to improve your life is to spend more time looking in the mirror and less time looking for villains. This does not mean ignoring external factors. It means refusing to give them complete control. Ask yourself, what could I do better? What could I learn? What could I improve? What could I change? These questions are uncomfortable, but they are productive. And productivity creates progress. Responsibility and freedom. At first glance, responsibility seems restrictive. More obligations. More accountability. More pressure. Yet responsibility often creates freedom. Because freedom comes from competence. And competence comes from ownership. The more responsibility you accept, the more capable you become. The more capable you become, the more options you have. The more options you have, the more freedom you experience. Responsibility and freedom are not opposites. They are partners. The success pattern. Study successful individuals closely and a pattern emerges. They make mistakes. They fail. They encounter setbacks. They experience bad luck, but they consistently return to ownership. Instead of asking, why me? They ask, what now? That simple shift keeps them moving forward. And forward movement eventually creates opportunity. The cost of waiting for rescue. Many people spend years waiting. Waiting for better circumstances. Waiting for help. Waiting for permission. Waiting for rescue. The problem is that rescue rarely arrives. And even when it does, it is temporary. Lasting change usually begins when a person decides to become responsible for their own progress. That decision marks a turning point. The moment waiting ends and ownership begins. The daily practice of responsibility. Responsibility is not a one-time decision. It is a daily habit. A repeated choice. Every challenge presents the opportunity to blame or own. Every setback presents the opportunity to complain or adapt. Every obstacle presents the opportunity to quit or learn. The choice appears small, but repeated daily, it shapes an entire life. The real difference. People who almost succeed often focus on reasons. People who succeed focus on responses. The first group explains. The second group acts. The first group waits for circumstances to improve. The second group improves themselves within the circumstances. That difference may seem subtle, yet it creates dramatically different futures. The question that changes everything whenever life presents a challenge, ask yourself, what is within my control right now? Focus there. Act there. Improve there. Because that is where progress lives. Not in blame. Not in excuses. Not in wishing. In ownership. The next discovery: responsibility creates power. But power alone is not enough. Many people take responsibility for a while, then quit when results take too long. Because there is another quality that separates achievers from almost achievers. A quality that becomes more valuable as goals become bigger. Patience. The ability to play the long game while everyone else is chasing immediate rewards. And that ability changes everything. Chapter 7. The long game mindset. Most people dramatically overestimate what they can achieve in a year, and dramatically underestimate what they can achieve in 10. This misunderstanding creates frustration, impatience, disappointment, and eventually, quitting. The people who almost succeed often expect rapid results. The people who actually succeed learn to play a different game. A longer game. A slower game. A more patient game. And because they think differently about time, they achieve things that seem impossible to everyone else. The problem with short-term thinking. Human beings are naturally attracted to immediate rewards. Immediate pleasure. Immediate feedback. Immediate results. The brain loves certainty and quick gratification. This instinct helped our ancestors survive. But in modern life, it often creates problems. Because most meaningful achievements take time. Building a business takes time. Building a body takes time. Building a reputation takes time. Building expertise takes time. Building wealth takes time. The person focused only on immediate results often becomes discouraged before the real rewards arrive. Why people quit too soon. Many goals fail for a simple reason. People expect visible progress too quickly. They start exercising. After a few weeks, little changes. They become discouraged. They start creating content. After a few months, growth is slow. They become discouraged. They start learning a skill. Progress feels invisible. They become discouraged. The effort seems disconnected from the reward. So they stop. The tragedy is that they often quit just before momentum begins. The bamboo tree lesson. There is a famous story about bamboo. For years after planting, very little appears above the ground. Someone unfamiliar with the process might assume nothing is happening. But beneath the surface, roots are expanding. Strength is developing. A foundation is being built. Then suddenly, growth accelerates dramatically. Success often follows a similar pattern. For long periods, progress appears invisible. Then eventually, the results become obvious. People see the outcome. They rarely see the years of hidden preparation. The invisible years. Every successful person has invisible years. Years when nobody notices. Nobody applauds. Nobody celebrates. Nobody recognizes the effort. The entrepreneur works quietly. The writer practices privately. The creator publishes to a tiny audience. The athlete trains without recognition. These years matter. Because they create the foundation for future success. The public usually notices the breakthrough. The breakthrough was built during the invisible years. Delayed gratification. One of the most valuable abilities in life is delayed gratification. The willingness to sacrifice immediate comfort for future rewards. saving money instead of spending it, practicing instead of relaxing, learning instead of entertaining yourself, building instead of consuming. This ability creates a huge advantage because most people prioritize the present at the expense of the future. The long-term thinker does the opposite. And eventually the future rewards become extraordinary. Why patience is rare? Patience is difficult because progress is often invisible. When results appear quickly, patience is unnecessary. When results are delayed, patience becomes essential. Most people can remain committed when success feels close. Few remain committed when success feels distant. This is why patience is rare. And rarity creates value. The compound effect of time magnifies everything. Good habits become powerful. Bad habits become costly. Small improvements become major advantages. Tiny mistakes become significant problems. The longer the timeline, the greater the impact. This is why successful people pay attention to seemingly insignificant actions. They understand the mathematics of compounding. A small advantage repeated consistently becomes enormous. Thinking in decades. Most people think in days, weeks, months, sometimes years. Exceptional people often think in decades. They ask, who do I want to become over the next 10 years? Not, what do I want this week? This perspective changes decision-making. Temporary discomfort becomes easier to tolerate. Short-term setbacks become less emotional. Patience becomes natural. Because the timeline is longer. Why fast success can be dangerous? Ironically, rapid success can create problems. When progress comes easily, people sometimes become dependent on quick rewards. The moment growth slows, motivation disappears. Long-term achievers develop a different relationship with progress. They do not need immediate validation. They understand that worthwhile goals often take longer than expected. Their commitment survives temporary stagnation. And that persistence creates extraordinary outcomes. The difference between interest and investment: many people are interested in success. Few are invested in it. Interest lasts until difficulty appears. Investment survives difficulty. Interest wants immediate returns. Investment accepts delayed returns. Interest seeks convenience. Investment embraces commitment. The long game belongs to investors, not spectators. Building a reputation. One of the greatest examples of long-term thinking is reputation. A reputation is not built in a day. It is built through thousands of interactions. Promises kept. Standards maintained. Values demonstrated. Actions repeated. Over time, trust accumulates. Credibility accumulates. Influence accumulates. The process is slow. The results are powerful. The advantage of staying in the game: many people underestimate a simple truth. Often, success belongs to those who stay in the game longest. Not necessarily the smartest. Not necessarily the most talented. Not necessarily the luckiest. The most persistent. The people who continue learning. Continue adapting. Continue improving. Continue showing up. Time rewards persistence. Because persistence creates opportunities that quitting never sees. Patience creates clarity. Impatience often leads to poor decisions. People chase shortcuts. Abandon good strategies. Jump from opportunity to opportunity. React emotionally. Patience creates clarity. The person becomes less reactive, more thoughtful, more strategic, more focused. The long-term perspective filters out distractions. Because not every opportunity deserves attention. The future is built quietly. Most transformations happen gradually. The body changes slowly. Skills improve slowly. Relationships deepen slowly. Businesses grow slowly. Confidence develops slowly. The changes are often invisible day to day, yet dramatic year to year. This is why patience matters. It allows enough time for the invisible work to become visible. Why almost successful people struggle. People who almost succeed often abandon the process too early. They expect immediate evidence. Immediate results. Immediate validation. When those rewards fail to appear, commitment weakens. The long-term thinker behaves differently. They trust the process. Not blindly, but consistently. They understand that many rewards arrive late, and they remain committed long enough to receive them. The ultimate competitive advantage in a world obsessed with speed, patience becomes a superpower. Most people want shortcuts. Quick wins. Instant results. Few are willing to invest years into mastery, years into growth, years into improvement. That willingness creates an enormous advantage. Because time eventually rewards those who remain committed. The question that changes perspective whenever progress feels slow: ask yourself, will this matter in 5 years? If the answer is yes, keep going. If the answer is no, stop worrying. This question eliminates many unnecessary frustrations and strengthens long-term thinking. The truth about success is rarely explosive. It is usually gradual, a series of small improvements, small decisions, small actions, repeated over long periods. The dramatic outcome is simply the visible result of years of invisible effort. The long game mindset understands this. And because it understands this, it remains patient while others quit. The next discovery. Patience helps you stay in the game. But staying in the game is not enough. You must also improve. Because time alone does not create success. Learning does. Growth does. Adaptation does. And the people who succeed possess a remarkable ability. They learn faster from mistakes than others do. Chapter 8. Learning faster than others. Failure is one of the most misunderstood concepts in the world. Most people fear it. Avoid it. Hide from it. Take it personally. Treat it as evidence that they are not good enough. As a result, they spend enormous amounts of energy trying to avoid mistakes. The irony is that the people who achieve extraordinary success usually make more mistakes than everyone else. Not because they are careless. Because they are active. They attempt more. Experiment more. Risk more. Learn more. And that learning becomes a powerful advantage. One of the biggest differences between people who succeed and people who almost do is not how often they fail. It is how quickly they learn. The two responses to failure: imagine two people making the same mistake. The first person says, "I failed." The second person says, "I learned." The event is identical. The interpretation is different. The first response often creates shame. The second creates growth. This distinction may seem small, yet it determines whether failure becomes a wall or a teacher. Why failure feels personal. Human beings naturally connect performance with identity. When something goes wrong, people often think, "I am a failure," instead of, "That attempt failed." The difference is critical. One attacks identity. The other evaluates behavior. Successful people separate the two. They understand that outcomes provide information, not definitions. A mistake says something about a strategy, not about a person's worth. The learning advantage: every experience contains lessons. Success teaches. Failure teaches. Challenges teach. Mistakes teach. The problem is that many people focus so intensely on emotion that they miss the lesson. They become embarrassed, defensive, discouraged. The successful person asks a different question: what is this trying to teach me? That question transforms failure into feedback. And feedback accelerates growth. Why action creates intelligence? Many people assume intelligence is fixed. Something you either possess or you don't. Reality is often more complex. Practical intelligence grows through experience. The entrepreneur becomes smarter by building businesses. The creator becomes smarter by publishing content. The leader becomes smarter by leading. The athlete becomes smarter by competing. Knowledge gained through action is different from knowledge gained through observation. It is tested, refined, experienced, and therefore more valuable. The cost of protecting the ego: the ego hates being wrong. It wants certainty, validation, approval. As a result, many people avoid situations where mistakes are possible. They play small, remain comfortable, avoid risks. The immediate benefit is emotional safety. The long-term cost is stagnation. Because growth requires mistakes, learning requires mistakes, mastery requires mistakes, a protected ego often creates a limited life. Every expert was once a beginner. People admire expertise. They see the polished result, the accomplished professional, the skilled performer, the respected creator. What they rarely see are the early failures, the awkward attempts, the mistakes, the frustration, the confusion. Every expert has a history of incompetence. Every master was once a beginner. The difference is that they continued learning long enough to improve. The feedback loop. Successful people create powerful feedback loops. They act, observe, adjust, act again. Each cycle increases effectiveness. This process repeats endlessly. The person improves not because they avoid mistakes, because they respond to mistakes intelligently. The cycle looks simple, yet it creates extraordinary results over time. Action, feedback, improvement, repeat. Why most people stay stuck? Many people repeat the same mistakes for years. Not because the mistakes are unavoidable, because they never analyze them. The event happens. They feel frustrated, then move on. No reflection, no adjustment, no learning. The result is repetition. Growth requires awareness. Without reflection, experience alone is not enough. Curiosity beats defensiveness. When something goes wrong, curiosity is more valuable than defensiveness. Defensiveness protects the ego. Curiosity improves performance. The defensive person asks, "How do I justify this?" The curious person asks, "How do I improve this?" One protects pride, the other creates progress, and progress ultimately matters more. Failure is data. Scientists perform experiments knowing many will fail. Why? Because failure provides information. Each unsuccessful attempt narrows possibilities. Each result teaches something useful. Life works similarly. Every failed attempt contains data. What worked? What didn't? What should change? What should continue? The people who succeed become excellent collectors of data. They treat mistakes as information, not condemnation. The speed of adaptation. Success often belongs to the person who adapts fastest. Not necessarily the strongest. Not necessarily the smartest. The most adaptable. Markets change. Technology changes. Opportunities change. Conditions change. People who learn quickly thrive. People who resist learning struggle. Adaptability transforms uncertainty into opportunity. The beginner's advantage. Interestingly, beginners often possess an advantage experts lose. Humility. Beginners expect to learn. Experts sometimes assume they already know. The willingness to remain teachable is powerful. Successful people maintain a beginner's mindset. They stay curious, open-minded, flexible. They continue learning even after achieving success. And that continuous learning keeps them growing. Mistakes are tuition. Many people view mistakes as losses. A more useful perspective is to view them as tuition. The price paid for education. Every lesson has a cost. Sometimes the cost is time. Sometimes money. Sometimes embarrassment. Sometimes disappointment. The question is not whether you will pay. The question is whether you will learn enough to justify the cost. Successful people do. Why experience matters? Experience is valuable because it compresses learning. It teaches lessons books cannot fully teach. Reality introduces complexity, nuance, unexpected challenges, practical knowledge. This is why action remains so important. The person who participates gains experience. The observer gains theory. Both have value. But experience often creates deeper understanding, turning setbacks into assets. One of the most remarkable traits of successful individuals is their ability to transform setbacks into advantages. A rejection teaches resilience. A failure teaches strategy. A mistake teaches awareness. A challenge teaches strength. The event itself may be negative. The lesson becomes valuable. Over time, accumulated lessons create wisdom. And wisdom creates better decisions. The real difference. People who almost succeed often view mistakes as evidence to stop. People who succeed view mistakes as evidence to adjust. The first group becomes discouraged. The second becomes educated. That difference compounds, year after year, decision after decision. Eventually, one person possesses experience. The other possesses regret. The question that accelerates growth whenever something goes wrong: ask yourself, what is the lesson hidden inside this experience? Not, why did this happen to me? Not, why am I so unlucky? The lesson-focused question creates growth. The blame-focused question creates frustration. Choose carefully. The path to mastery. Mastery is not built through perfection. It is built through correction. Mistake. Adjustment. Improvement. Repeat. This cycle never ends. And that is exactly why mastery remains possible. Because every mistake contains information. And information creates progress. The next discovery. Learning faster than others creates an enormous advantage. But eventually, learning alone is not enough. Knowledge must become identity. Because long-term success is not simply about what you know. It is about who you become. And the people who achieve extraordinary things understand a truth that many overlook: your life rarely rises above your identity. Chapter 9. Becoming the person success requires. Most people focus on outcomes. The promotion. The business. The money. The audience. The achievement. The recognition. They ask, how do I get the result? It seems like the right question. But it often leads people in the wrong direction. Because lasting success is rarely an outcome problem. It is an identity problem. The people who succeed do not simply achieve different things. They become different people. And that transformation changes everything. The hidden truth about achievement: every result in your life is connected to behavior. And every behavior is connected to identity. If you believe you are disciplined, you act differently. If you believe you are capable, you act differently. If you believe you are resilient, you act differently. Identity shapes behavior. Behavior shapes outcomes. This means that changing your life often requires changing your self-image first. Not your goals. Not your circumstances. Your identity. The outcome trap. Many people become obsessed with results. They want to lose weight, make money, build influence, gain recognition. These goals are understandable, but focusing exclusively on outcomes creates a problem. Once the outcome is achieved, motivation often disappears. The person reaches the destination, then loses direction. Identity-based growth works differently. Instead of asking, what do I want to achieve? It asks, who do I want to become? That question creates lasting transformation. Because identities remain after goals are completed. Why goals alone are not enough? Goals are valuable. They provide direction, focus, purpose. But goals do not create behavior automatically. A person may have ambitious goals and poor habits, big dreams and weak discipline, strong intentions and inconsistent action. Identity bridges the gap. Because behavior naturally follows self-perception. The person who sees themselves as healthy exercises differently. The person who sees themselves as a creator creates differently. The person who sees themselves as disciplined behaves differently. The power of self-image. Your self-image acts like an invisible ceiling. People rarely perform far above what they believe they deserve. If someone believes success is for other people, they unconsciously limit themselves. If someone believes they are incapable, they avoid opportunities. If someone believes they always quit, they stop when things become difficult. The behavior feels logical, but it is often identity-driven. Change the identity, and behavior begins changing as well. Every action is a vote. Imagine that identity is built through votes. Every action casts a vote for the type of person you are becoming. Every workout is a vote for being healthy. Every writing session is a vote for being a writer. Every promise kept is a vote for being reliable. Every difficult conversation is a vote for being courageous. No single vote determines identity. But repeated votes create belief. And belief influences future actions. This is how transformation happens. Gradually. Consistently. Through evidence. Becoming before achieving. Many people think achievement comes first. Then identity. They believe, when I succeed, I'll feel successful. When I become confident, I'll act confidently. When I achieve the goal, I'll become the person. Reality often works in reverse. You become the person first. Then the results follow. The entrepreneur thinks like an entrepreneur before success appears. The leader behaves like a leader before receiving a title. The writer writes before becoming known. Identity precedes achievement. Why habits matter. Habits are powerful because they reinforce identity. Every repeated action sends a message to the brain. The message says, "This is who I am." The more evidence accumulates, the stronger the identity becomes. This is why small habits matter so much. Not because they create immediate results. Because they create repeated proof. And proof changes belief. The identity gap. One reason people struggle is that their goals and identities conflict. They want success, but see themselves as inconsistent. They want growth, but see themselves as incapable. They want change, but remain attached to an old self-image. This creates internal conflict. The mind resists behaviors that contradict identity. To create lasting change, the identity must evolve. The stories we tell ourselves. Every person carries internal stories. Stories about ability, potential, worth, capability. Some stories create strength. Others create limitations. I'm not good with money. I'm not creative. I'm not disciplined. I'm not a leader. These statements often become self-fulfilling. Not because they are true. Because behavior aligns with belief. Changing the story changes the actions that follow. Building evidence. Positive thinking alone is rarely enough. Identity changes through evidence. The person who wants confidence must collect confident actions. The person who wants discipline must collect disciplined actions. The person who wants resilience must collect resilient actions. Evidence creates belief. Belief strengthens behavior. Behavior creates more evidence. The cycle becomes self-reinforcing. The cost of an outdated identity. Many adults continue living according to identities formed years earlier. Perhaps decades earlier. A failure from childhood. A criticism from a teacher. A painful rejection. A difficult experience. The event becomes a label. The label becomes an identity. The identity shapes behavior. Years pass. The person changes. But the story remains. This is dangerous. Because outdated identities create unnecessary limitations. The responsibility of reinvention. One of the greatest freedoms in life is the ability to reinvent yourself. Not instantly. Not magically. Gradually. Through behavior. Through choices. Through repetition. The past may influence you, but it does not have to define you. Identity is not fixed. It is continuously being shaped. Every day. Every action. Every decision. Why successful people keep growing. Successful people rarely become attached to a single identity. They continue evolving. Learning. Adapting. Expanding. They remain students. Remain curious. Remain open. This flexibility prevents stagnation. Because growth requires continual reinvention. The person who stops evolving eventually stops growing. Becoming worthy of the goal. Many people ask, how do I get what I want? A more powerful question is, Who must I become to create what I want? This question shifts attention inward, toward habits, character, discipline, responsibility, growth. And that is where lasting success begins. Because the quality of your life often reflects the quality of the person creating it. The real difference. People who almost succeed focus primarily on goals. People who succeed focus on identity. The first group asks, how do I get the outcome? The second asks, how do I become the kind of person who naturally creates that outcome? The difference may appear subtle, but it changes everything. Because identities endure, goals expire. The mirror test. At the end of each day, ask yourself, what type of person did my actions vote for today? Not what you intended. Not what you planned. What you actually did. Because identity is built through behavior. And behavior determines destiny. The final transformation, the greatest achievements are not external. They are internal. The confidence developed. The discipline built. The resilience strengthened. The courage earned. The character formed. External success may come and go. Internal growth remains. That growth becomes the foundation for everything else. The next discovery. We have explored discipline, consistency, responsibility, patience, learning, identity. Now we arrive at the final chapter. The chapter that brings everything together. Because the difference between people who succeed and those who almost do is not one giant decision. It is a small gap. Repeated daily. A gap so small most people overlook it, yet powerful enough to shape an entire life. Chapter 10. The small gap that changes everything. When people look at extraordinary success, they often imagine extraordinary causes. They see the successful entrepreneur and assume brilliance. They see the elite athlete and assume talent. They see the best-selling author and assume genius. They see the respected leader and assume natural ability. Sometimes those qualities play a role, but they are rarely the entire story. Because the difference between people who succeed and those who almost do is often surprisingly small. Not one massive decision. Not one life-changing moment. Not one dramatic breakthrough. A small gap. Repeated daily, over years. And eventually, that small gap changes everything. The power of tiny differences. Imagine two people standing side by side. At first, they appear almost identical. Similar intelligence. Similar opportunities. Similar backgrounds. Similar ambitions. One makes slightly better choices. Learns slightly faster. Stays slightly longer. Works slightly more consistently. Takes slightly more responsibility. Quits slightly less often. The difference seems insignificant, almost invisible. But life compounds. And compounding transforms small differences into massive outcomes. Success is rarely sudden. People love stories about overnight success. The entrepreneur who suddenly became wealthy. The creator who suddenly went viral. The athlete who suddenly became famous. The story is exciting. But it is usually incomplete. What appears sudden from the outside is often the result of years of preparation. Years of effort. Years of learning. Years of consistency. Years of persistence. The breakthrough may be sudden. The preparation rarely is. The daily choice. Every day presents a series of choices. Small choices. Easy to ignore. Easy to underestimate. Do you practice or procrastinate? Learn or distract yourself? Take responsibility or make excuses? Continue or quit? Improve or remain comfortable? Most people focus on major decisions. Life is often shaped by minor ones. Because major decisions happen occasionally. Small decisions happen constantly. The 1% principle. Imagine improving by just 1%. Not dramatically. Not dramatically enough for anyone to notice. Just a little. 1% more disciplined. 1% more patient. 1% more focused. 1% more committed. The daily improvement appears insignificant. Yet over time, it becomes extraordinary. Because small improvements compound, just like small mistakes. The direction matters more than the speed. The accumulation effect. Every action creates consequences. Not always immediately, but eventually. Every workout contributes to health. Every page contributes to a book. Every skill session contributes to mastery. Every conversation contributes to relationships. Every decision contributes to identity. The effects accumulate. The person rarely notices day to day, but years later, the accumulation becomes impossible to ignore. Why most people miss it? The small gap is difficult to see because results are delayed. Effort happens now. Rewards arrive later. The cause and effect are separated by time. This creates confusion. People underestimate consistent effort because the rewards are invisible at first. They overestimate shortcuts because the rewards appear immediate. The patient person understands the delay and keeps going anyway. The extraordinary is built from the ordinary. Many people search for extraordinary strategies, secret techniques, special advantages, hidden shortcuts. The truth is often simpler. Extraordinary lives are usually built through ordinary behaviors repeated consistently. Showing up, following through, learning, improving, adapting, persisting. The actions are not glamorous. The results often are. The gap between knowing and doing. One of the most important gaps in life is the gap between knowledge and action. Many people know what they should do. Exercise, learn, save money, develop skills, take responsibility. The challenge is not knowledge. It is execution. Information alone rarely changes lives. Applied information does. This is why successful people focus less on knowing and more on doing. What 10 years can do. Imagine where consistent effort can lead over 10 years. A decade of learning. A decade of practice. A decade of improvement. A decade of persistence. The transformation would be remarkable. Not because of one giant breakthrough. Because of thousands of small actions. The same principle works in reverse. A decade of neglect, excuses, delay, inconsistency produces equally powerful consequences. Time amplifies behavior. The hidden advantage. One of the greatest advantages in life is reliability. Being the person who follows through. The person who keeps promises. The person who finishes. The person who continues. The person who can be trusted. Reliability seems ordinary, yet it creates extraordinary opportunities. Because reliable people become valuable, and valuable people create impact. The final comparison. Consider two individuals. Both possess talent. Both possess potential. Both possess dreams. One repeatedly chooses comfort. The other repeatedly chooses growth. One repeatedly waits. The other repeatedly acts. One repeatedly explains. The other repeatedly takes responsibility. One repeatedly starts over. The other repeatedly continues. The daily difference is small. The long-term difference is enormous. This is the gap that changes everything. The ultimate truth. Success is not usually a mystery. It is a process. A process built on behaviors, habits, choices, attitudes, mindsets. Repeated consistently over time. The people who succeed are not always extraordinary. But their habits are. Their standards are. Their commitment is. Their consistency is. And those qualities create extraordinary outcomes. The question that matters most as you reach the end of this book, one question remains: which side of the gap will you live on? The side of potential, or the side of action? The side of excuses, or the side of ownership? The side of comfort, or the side of growth? The side of almost, or the side of achievement? No one else can answer that question. Only you. And the answer will not be revealed by your intentions. It will be revealed by your actions. A letter to your future self. Imagine meeting yourself 10 years from now. The future version of you stands before you. Stronger, wiser, more capable, more accomplished, What would that person say? Perhaps something simple. Thank you for continuing. Thank you for not quitting. Thank you for staying patient. Thank you for taking responsibility. Thank you for doing the small things consistently. Thank you for becoming the person success required. The future is built by the choices you make today. Not once. Repeatedly. The final lesson. The difference between people who succeed and those who almost do is rarely dramatic. It is rarely obvious. It is rarely exciting. It is a small gap. A small gap in discipline. A small gap in persistence. A small gap in responsibility. A small gap in learning. A small gap in consistency. A small gap in action. Small daily gaps create massive lifetime differences. That is the secret. Not talent. Not luck. Not genius. The willingness to keep choosing growth when comfort is available. The willingness to continue when quitting is easier. The willingness to act when waiting feels safer. And the willingness to do these things long enough for the results to appear. The beginning hidden inside the ending. This chapter marks the end of the book. But ideally, it marks the beginning of something else. A new standard. A new commitment. A new identity. A new level of responsibility. A new relationship with action. Because success is not a destination. It is a way of living. A way of thinking. A way of behaving. A way of becoming. And beginning today, that choice belongs to you. Choose wisely. Choose consistently. Choose daily. And watch what happens over the years that follow.